Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was just listening, and so I made sure I pressed the closed caption button because I was afraid I would forget too.
I know.
Good to know.
I do apologize for that. I'm hoping we can find a better flow, but for now, that was the
Nothing to
easiest one we came up
apologize
with.
for. Yeah, I mean, like it just actually makes me feel a little bit better because I'm part of a group called Alley Talks, and we do just a monthly meetup, and it's like chaos always behind the scenes. So it's like refreshing when I see that like everybody has these chaos moments, or like when you're testing like new platforms or new like plugins or something. So
Yes.
yeah.
No, we really did. Catherine and and our team, we tried to as much as possible do it ahead of time. But the day of, when you're about to press that go live button, I guarantee something
Always.
will happen.
There's
Yeah.
I call them
always something.
like tech gremlins. Like I battle them. Some are like small little gremlins and like easy to like defeat, and then there's the monsters. So yeah, I feel you. Been there. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen.
Yes, tell us, what are we talking about today, Carie, for your session? And sorry, Catherine, what were you saying?
Oh no, I just, while we were setting that up, I wanted to shout out a couple of the new follows that we got. Let's see, Dev, I'm Hava, and Real something Bill.
Maybe Realty? Realty? I don't. That's me, Bill. You can tell me if I butchered it, but that's where I'm going with your name.
But thank you. We're super glad you're here. We're glad that this has been relevant, interesting to you, and we are hyped to bring you 2 more awesome speakers with more accessibility content. So.
All right. Are we ready to pull on your screen, Carie? Shall I add it to the stream?
Sure, sounds good. Is it live?
It should be. It should be.
That's the nice thing about having a live chat. They will tell you right away.
Oh, okay, good.
They do. They do. They often are like nothing, no visuals. So I'm going to go ahead and say everyone can see. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So I'm just sharing on my screen real quick. I did make slides for this, and I'll send you the direct link as well. But I figured with the time and all of that, let's just kind of go straight into the code. And if you want to follow along or get a little bit more information, it's all there too. So Noticed is something that I use to put up my slides. It's really cool because it does HTML, and so you can, and also all the like resources and all that. So it's the most accessible platform that I have found so far to do this sort of thing versus, like if I emailed you something or linked you to a Google Doc or something. But this way we can all see it, but also it can be used by, screen readers and whatnot. So just real quick, I guess I could show my one slide with my face on it. So if you do want to contact me, it doesn't even have that information on there. But my name is Carie Fisher, and you can find me on Twitter. Just take one of the R's out of my first name. Otherwise, you may get a different account. But I work at DQ and Iowa State University. I'm working on my PhD, so I literally have no free time, but happy that I had the opportunity to come on today. It's early for me. I'm kind of a late start to my day usually, so I'm happy to be here and yeah, just jump right into it. So I made you all a Valentine. My SVG, we're going from inaccessible to accessible, right? So we have like kind of these 5 steps that we're going to go through, and we're going to talk through the process. But yeah, feel free to jump in with questions, or if anyone brings them up during it, let me know. And all of these links that are also on that notice.
So exciting. I don't know what it is, but I love like messing with SVGs in line and like cleaning them up. It's just like a thing for me. So I'm just so excited to talk about this with you.
I am too. I'm kind of an SVG nerd. Like, there's something about SVGs. It's like scale vector graphics for anyone who's new to it. But why I like it is because it's literally visual code. Like, it's not an image, like it's code, but it looks like an image, or you can make it look like an image. And there are things that we can do to make them accessible, for color contrast. I even heard you talking about what was Ashley calling it, the T something, I forget what she was calling, instead of options or whatever. So light mode, dark mode, and prefers reduced motion are a big piece of this as well on making it accessible, because it's not just about that markup. Just like we talked in the very beginning, like, user preferences, and it's, somebody brought up like the old code of the old day, everything was in tables, and technically, semantically, it was marked up a lot cleaner. Just by default, we didn't really have divs and some of the things that we have, the options that we have now. We have dividus now, and divs on their own are like, they're blank slates, right? Whereas before we had specific, like, this is a table, this is a heading, or this level, right? Whereas now we could have a div that's a heading. So
It's very
anyway,
much like the any
yeah,
type, right? Like where you're just,
yeah,
oh, I'm safe for using div here
yeah, you
because I'm
are,
not
yeah.
wrong. I'm not technically correct, but I'm not wrong. So,
So yeah, so this is kind of goes into that realm of like, what is accessibility versus usability. So like, semantically, that markup could be good for someone using an AT device like a screen reader, but then you've missed out on people with color blindness or low vision or dyslexia or other cognitive issues or reading disabilities, right? So, or people like we talked about even today, even people on the panel, that certain colors and things like mess with their brain and make them dizzy or tired, or just kind of aren't good for them. So this concept of giving options as well. So hopefully this will bring it all together here. But so okay, so this is the first step. So the really first step is kind of super easy. I've done nothing. So this is easy. I pulled this heart from Wiki Commons. It's, I found it. There's a link right here if you want to find it in the SVG. I just popped it into a new tab. I copied the code. I popped it in here, and this is essentially what I got. So pretty low key. I did add, I guess, the ID. You can do exports from like anything. So, or you can get super complex. So we're not talking about the super complex, like the D3s or high charts or something that's going to be a little bit more interactive. That's like a whole nother talk, the data visualization. This is like the icons that you have for your social media, or maybe you have a little bit of movement, or you have those micro movements on a site. So this could be one of those, or could have impact on things like that beyond just like simple SVGs as well. But
yeah, Sid was asking,
yeah.
I've searched the web but couldn't find a resource to design icons in Figma that are scalable proportionally and consistent in looks. Any chance you could share a few? So I didn't know if that was something we'd touch on, or if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, scale vector graphics, I mean, if anything exported as an SVG would be able to be proportionate and consistent. So that's why one of the reasons why we love SVG so much is that it doesn't matter the medium, or it doesn't matter the size, as long as you've got it in the view box coded correctly, or the image coded correctly, it's going to shrink and move as needed. So I don't know if
I feel
Figma
like I
has an
need
option.
a
Yeah.
ViewBox dive to like detox the bad knowledge I have of ViewBox.
Yeah, and I mean, you don't necessarily have to use it. For my case, you'll see why I use it later, because I'm going to add an SVG image within our SVG, but yeah, so it's kind of a two-step
Oh, we're
thing.
gonna
So
nest. I'm so excited. Let's do it.
it's going to get a little more complex. Let's just say that. All right. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about Figma, but just essentially you could export things into like Illustrator and InDesign. I know for sure, probably any of the Adobe ones you can export as an SVG. So just export it as that. And that's essentially what you'll get. You'll get this SVG tag. You'll get a bunch of numbers on a path, a lot of groupings sometimes, depending on how complex your SVG is. But this is essentially what you get, just numbers that don't mean much. All right. Hopefully, I don't know if that helps. It probably didn't help them at all, but
No, I love it.
all
I
right.
love it.
All right. So before we jump into the next step, I'm going to just quickly, I don't know, it's got the editor's part on there. I'm going to quickly give you this link. So this is what the resource that I created for an article. I wrote it first at DQ in like 2019, and then I revamped it last year for Smashing. And the reason why I'm really excited and nerdy about this kind of stuff is that I, the question is like, we are starting with semantics. So how do I make this HTML, or in this case, like the SVG code or an IMG tag, if I'm using that to link out to an SVG, how do I make that the most accessible? And if you know about IMGs, I mean, it's a tag, and you can do these things called alternative, ALT equals, and then you can write in a little blurb like wolf howling at the moon, right? And so you can add different things, aria labeled by. These aren't the only patterns that exist. These are just kind of some examples of patterns. So if you're linking out to SVG, acts just like an image. So anything that you do for accessibility for an image, you would do for that SVG. Where it gets a little bit more complex, I think, is when you get into using the SVG tag, because there is no ALT, there's no alt option for SVGs. So you're essentially, you have to decide, like, how is it that I'm going to, what do I do? What do I use if I don't have an alt? Image is super easy. It's an alt. Either I have one or it's empty, and there you go. Whereas here, we've got a lot more options to be considering. On top of that, because SVG is code and not an image, a screen reader or an AT wouldn't know that it's necessarily conveying anything visually. And so you have to add that role equals IMG, and that's just an ARIA label or ARIA role that's basically saying to AT devices, assistive technology devices, like, hey, this is an image, treat it like an image, right? So I'm saying a lot of words. I saw some things pop up. So stop me if you have any questions.
No, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Someone was asking, is the age, I'll plop it up on the screen, of pixel perfection gone? In the past, SVG had sometimes problems because you couldn't match the edges with the physical pixels. I guess nowadays, high-res screens, that's no longer a concern. I told them I'd personally not run into it, but do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's different talk that I did call for ID24. If you're not familiar with that, that's a 24-hour accessibility-a-thon and speakers every hour. And so when I did that, when I really kind of got into kind of the advantages and disadvantages to the different image types. And so maybe go back and check that out. It's got a link to back to notice with that, that information as well, because there's a lot of nuances, right? So depending on, like the settings or the format type, right, you might have some of these issues that you're mentioning. I also haven't seen that with SVGs. I've seen that with like pings, like PNGs a lot, again, depending on how you're saving it and things like that. But I would say go check out that if you're interested in like the idea of like what format might be best for you and how to support that accessibly, because that kind of gets into that a little bit. I don't know if that's helpful or not. I'm like, go here,
No.
go watch this.
No, it's perfect. It's
but
perfect.
I haven't seen it with SVGs, and that's why I love them, because they are pretty perfect when it comes to pixels and scaling.
What the problem they're describing sounds vaguely familiar. So I think it used, I don't think it's a thing anymore, but chat, correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you for the follow, Elmer.dev. Welcome to the fam. Welcome. All right. So I will hand the mic back to you. I think it was all the comments that we had for now.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So anyway, so when we're thinking about SVG accessibility, we're kind of like thinking, okay, like what is it that I want to include? Like how much information do I want to include? So we have kind of like the basic ones, and then we have some alternative, extended alternative. So kind of take a look at this. There's like 15 patterns that you can look at. I'm scrolling kind of slowly so you don't make anyone nauseous.
It's such a nice like doc that you've made here. I love it.
Well, I'm just kind of a nerd like that, because the problem is that, and this is the problem I get into all the time when I talk with clients or people that get like overwhelmed with accessibility. It's like, there's a lot to know on top of all the things that we already have to know, especially if you're, I think, especially front-end developers, you've got all the things, all the frameworks, all the nuance, all the different flavors of JavaScript, all the CSS cool things that are coming out and happening. And on top of that, you throw a lot of the heavy burden still falls on front-end developers to get the accessibility right. And so that's why it's like, it's hard to know all the things at all the times. And so resources like this, there's a lot of other things like allysupport.io is another one I use a lot. But it's one of those like, how do I know that this works? Like, I could test all of these. So if you go all the way down, there's all these different combinations of screen readers and browsers. Again, we know that's the tip of the iceberg for testing. There's other things we needed to be doing too, but combinations of browsers and screen readers work together in different ways. And some are combated against each other. And then desktop, and it goes down to mobile, but I don't want to scroll too far down here, but you get into it, you get kind of, the first groups are pretty basic and simple. And then as you scroll to the right, you see that there's all kinds of issues, right? So text is ignored, descriptions ignored, titles ignored on certain combinations, right? But they're not, there's no consistent pattern in the sense of, here text is being ignored. In this particular case, description's being ignored. And then, as you scroll down, it's like, oh, okay, in this case, description's fine, but the text is still ignored there. So it's hard to know. So resources like this, allysupport.io is a good one. Like I said, HTML5 accessibility is also a good one to get a little bit more knowledge if you don't have time to do all the testing.
Brave said, Linux desktop is being overlooked again. Oh, you Linuxer. Is it not on this list?
It's not on this list. And the reason why is because I don't have a Linux machine. And so I would have to have a dedicated machine. I know there are some like testing platforms for screen readers where I think Orca could be on that one, but Orca is the screen reader that's for Linux specifically. And what I know of it and what I've seen it and other people use it in the past and do demos. So it behaves very similarly to NVDA. And I think that is possibly because that's an open source screen reader. And so my guess is that Orca may be looking at some of that code and seeing how it fits in that Linux platform.
So that was another one. I know we were joking around earlier, but like I've said Nuvda before because I was like, I don't know what.
That's a new one. I've not heard that before. Yeah.
I will not do that anymore. Thank you for the help.
So I would say accessibility, we really like acronyms. I don't know if you noticed that, but we have, ALLY, and we have WCAG or WCAG or whatever you want to call it, NVDA, JAWS, like VoiceOver is like the only one that we really say the full one of. Orca, I think is an acronym as well, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's like all these acronyms, but assistive technology, even we call it AT. So yeah,
that's true. Anyway. Someone the voiceover, I've never heard someone actually say vo or something. So like that's true.
I see it sometimes, but it's more of like with the commands because the VO commander can be two keys, like the control option. You can map it to your caps, but yeah. So sometimes I'll see VO as a key, but people just say voiceover. I don't know. I was gonna say TalkBack is what we use for Android primarily, and so that's not acronym either. So I don't know.
Robert is over here cracking me up.
Yeah, how can we make things accessible? Let's just make them all acronyms. I mean, there's some truth to that. Okay. I didn't do it. I didn't make any.
Oh, Ashley said that I've heard some people say VO. Oh, VO. Okay. I just really want us as a community to make a guide, a pronunciation guide. That's all I'm asking. A simple, are we saying the letters? Are we pronouncing it as a word acronym? Like what are we saying?
Exactly. Well, I think that's part of your individual option, right? Going back to user choice and on all of that, you have that choice to call it what you want. Some people like to watch the world burn. I don't know. All right, so here we are. So that all kind of feeds into this one, right? I'm trying to grab that cleaner link there. But what we're doing here is we're expanding on that. And the reason why I even brought up that chart is because I don't know about you, but sometimes I write things or I do little code snippets just so I don't forget something that I learned. Or if I did like extensive research like I did on that one, it's like, okay, I can just reference that instead of having to think like, okay, which one was it that did this? And okay, so that's why I do it. It's not for any of you guys, just for myself. If you happen to find it useful, that's a plus, but it's mostly because I want to not forget. But so in this particular case, I've referenced the table, right? And so part of knowing which pattern I want to use in general is just kind of knowing what AT I'm supporting in this particular case, because we're talking about code, but we're thinking beyond AT, of course, to users. But if we're talking specifically, code, the code base, like how do I know which pattern is going to be the most robust? I'm going to take a look at a matrix like that and decide, okay, this one seems to cover the most information or the most AT combination, browser combinations, mobile, desktop, that sort of thing. So I'm going to be like pretty confident in my choice going forward because I know that. And I definitely would want to double check, make sure things haven't changed since that last report or matrix was invented. Don't necessarily trust things that have been around forever and you don't test it, right? That's kind of on you. If you just assume like that Stack Overflow answer from 2013 is still applicable today. Sorry. It's true. All right,
it's so relevant. Oh, also, welcome, Contentful Devs. Thanks for the follow. And do you mind if I ask a weird question, Carie? It might be weird.
I like weird questions. I don't know.
So StreamYard just enabled background music like yesterday, basically. And I was thinking of turning it on, but I didn't want to freak you out. So
why would that freak you out?
Have like a little, well, like all of a sudden there's like a rave going on background. I don't know what it's going to sound like.
I appreciate that because I think I would have thought it was me and been like, oh my gosh, like what like YouTube video do I have playing?
Yeah. Okay. We're going to test it out. Chat. Please let us know if it's too loud or, maybe just weird. There's different types. I think this was one of the best loops. But it's going now. It's in the background. Yeah, we can change it up. So let me know. But you take over and we'll see if it's too loud or too quiet.
I feel like it should be something Valentine's Day related, like
okay,
romantic.
Okay.
This sounds like
there's a daydreaming one. I haven't proofed these yet. So there's also a feeding the ducks one we can try.
Oh,
I
sweet.
really am curious about what feeding the ducks
Go for it.
Sounds like. Okay. All right. Here's feeding the ducks, and let me know, chat, if you don't like it. Oh, that's funny.
I wonder why it's better than my robot. My robot named Steve, and he decided he wanted to vacuum the hallway during this stream. I think it's just one of those tech days where it's just everything's gonna implode. But so yeah, if you hear Steve in the background.
But we're thankful for Steve, right? Because
yes,
when the overlords take over, we don't want to talk bad about them.
No, and I feel like Steve's on my side. Although I make him clean a lot of dog hair, so he might not be happy about that.
Poor Steve. Someone said, "Is this from OpenSCAD? Is that?" This is going to make me sound silly. Is that an SVG question or a music question?
I think it's a music question.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah.
We are using StreamYard to stream to Twitch, and they just enabled background music.
That's awesome. I like this. This is very jazzy.
I don't know where the ducks come in, but I'm waiting for it. We'll see.
It'll be like all nice and calm, and then at the end it'll just be like a duck, like quacking.
Yeah. No, wait for it. We'll find the ducks, everyone. We'll find them together. Sorry. All right. So back to SVG. I totally derailed us. Sorry about that.
That's awesome. Derail us all you want. This is kind of fun and low key. So, and I've created notes here in some of my CodePens just so again, this is more for you. This is less for me. This is more for people who are looking at it because I already know the thought process going through it, but some people might not. So the first step was super easy. I just grabbed something off the web. Hopefully you own it or you built it or whatever, but you exported it as an SVG with the SVG tag. Super simple. So now what I've done is I've referenced that matrix. I know that I'm not going to include a lot of like detailed information. I know it's not dynamic. So I know that I can do like a simple pattern option. So in this case, I'm adding this role of IMG and I'm adding this title, large red heart with text that says, "Be my Valentine." And so the title essentially is going to be acting like a text alternative. So in an IMG tag, you ALT equals, and then you would write something like this. I've also added some additional information like IDs. SVGs, for whatever reason, are big on IDs versus classes, but you could potentially use a class here as well. So there's not really a reason why. I've also done this, which I wanted to highlight real quick, is that this text we've added, and I've added it as the G is the group. So the first group is the heart. And so SVGs are similar to like CSS in that the last thing that you create or the last layer will be the one on top. So it's gonna go down the order. So the first thing it'll do is draw the heart, and then it'll put my text on top of it. If I swap those, then my text would be under my heart. So I might do that in a case of like, something hover or click or something is gonna happen like that maybe. But in this case, I want it on top. And what I did here is I added this aria hidden equals true. And so we talked a little bit about that like super briefly this morning, but there's a lot of different things that you can do for accessibility that includes aria. But the trick is that you have to know what you're doing with aria because it's super powerful. And there's this really cool study by WebAIM Million, from WebAIM called the WebAIM Million. And I look at the million top sites in the world, and they've got like,
oh wow,
they look at everything, right? And they kind of, like we talked this morning, they're using an automated tool, so we know it's not getting everything, but it's getting some high level stuff. And the reports are, I think it's like 41% more likely to be inaccessible if you use aria than if you would have just not used it at all and just like not tried to make it accessible. So it's this like really fine line with like, using code like aria that's powerful, but knowing, that you're using it correctly in the context. So
yeah, honestly, every time I dig into aria, there's often labels or like little warnings of like, make sure you need this, like make sure you're actually doing this where you need to be doing it. Brave was asking who's aria. So for those of you who don't know, I actually don't know where the name came from. Do you?
It's an acronym. Why
no!
Yes.
No. Oh, you do this to me.
I know, I'm sorry. So here
I was like, oh yeah, it's named after a girl who's really like into accessibility. No.
Accessible rich internet application. So what it is it's not really its own language. What it is I call it like a translation language. So, or translator. So we have your HTML, you have your, your styles and your JavaScript, right? And so what it does is it kind of bridges them together, right? So again, depending on what aria you're using and how you're using it, because context, accessibility, it could be summed up in one word, context. But I kind of think of it as like helper text. So like back in the day, a really easy example is like back in the day, we didn't have buttons, right? So that came about in like HTML4. So to make a button, you would have to do role equals button, right? And so it's this concept that, and we have HTML that comes in, a lot of times replaces some of that aria, but it hasn't replaced everything. And certain things like hiding things or showing things, or like, is this thing toggled open or shut, right? There's a lot of like things that don't quite exist yet fully that you could do like straight up HTML for or something. So yeah, so kind of helper text. Sorry. Yeah, that's a lot of text. Yeah, so more acronyms.
I love it.
More acronyms for you.
Robert said, I thought she was a mermaid from the cartoon. And Trezzy, welcome first time chatter, was giving us an acronym breakdown. And then I also want to shout out, thanks for the follow, Mr. Metabytes. Welcome to the fam. Welcome. Oh my God.
All right, how am I doing on time so
I really, let's see, you are at... We actually started your session a little early, so you've got more wiggle room than most, but I have 24 minutes at your max, so we got plenty of time.
I'll try not to talk to you. Yeah, Ashley is right. No aria is better than bad aria. Yeah, the first rule of aria is don't use aria. That's another way of saying it. Like a la Fight Club from,
I know, I was like, is this a Fight Club reference for aria?
I have a talk. So one of my talks, that's what I talk about. It's like aria, like first rule of aria, don't use aria. Second rule of aria is use it only if you know how to use it. So, I mean, that's the long and short of it. Because it is powerful. Yeah.
I think someone who I really respect in the UI community was saying that like clean semantic markup with like, built-in tags, kind of like some of our speakers were showing earlier, will get you most of the way there.
Yes.
Like there are outlying cases when you need to pull in ARIA.
Correct.
And this, I mean, I feel like is one of those outlying cases. I mean, we're writing inline SVG. Like, I think,
Yeah.
you know,
So in this case, I could not hide it, and I could have it read the thing. It would say, "Be my Valentine" on the screen readers. But I've up here in the title, I've already described it. So to me, this is redundant. And so again, it's not something that needs to be spoken to screen readers and screen reader users, I should say, or AT devices that are using, you know, ARIA. So this concept of repetition, I guess it would be better than not having it at all, right? So it's this concept of I'm enhancing the user experience by adding this additional element, because I've already explained up at the top, so you're not hearing it again and again and again as you go through. So, yeah. All right, so besides that, I added some more styling to the heart, and obviously my message had to have an ID and some design as well. All right, so now we moved on to step 4. Step 4, all right, be my Valentine. I didn't just spell it wrong. I do know how to spell it. I said a B.
I was hoping there was going to be a B. I was hoping.
There's always something. I gotta throw something cute in there. So in this step, we've changed the title, right? So we've added additional information, right? We want to make sure we're always talking about that. All of that's kind of the same. This is where I kind of wanted to highlight too, because technically what I have is I have an SVG, and this is why I needed the view box. So going back to view box, I needed to make sure that B was going to be in the right spot no matter how I was scaling it or moving around things. So the B is just an IMG tag. So I'm linking out to it again on Wiki Commons. And so it's going to use the traditional alternative text. So in this case, I have black and yellow cartoon B. But this is the thing, right? Because we've already got that information and that title, if I wanted to, I could erase this. And what this is called is a null alt. So essentially it's not missing, right? Alt is still there, it's just null, like NULL, null alt. And so what that does to a screen reader essentially is saying this is decorative, don't read it. And in our case, I've already added it in the title. And so that's why I could do that here. So just wanted to show that, like, so we have an SVG with the heart and the text, and then we have an SVG on top of it, which is an IMG tag. So layers. Like,
I love it. I love it. My son, he's 2. He calls them bum bees.
Oh,
so
that is adorable.
I feel like I need to make a bum bee Valentine, but that's just
code him a B. You can do it. So this one is the other one that I did on this one was the giving the user an option, right? Or in the case of some people who only prefer, and typically I'm all dark mode all the way. So I'm showing you my settings, my preferences. I changed it to light just for this demo so I could flip it to dark. So typically this is how I would see it. And because I'm 99.99% of the time using dark mode, and I do get migraines a decent amount, and especially looking at the screen all day, I prefer this. Just, it's my preference, right? So the easy thing to do here, right? So I haven't added it's not super complex. We added a little bit more CSS. Obviously our B, we had to position in a certain way. But here's where that prefers color scheme kind of comes into play. So there's not a lot I have to change. And like when I've done this on a larger scale, like on a whole website, you know, you might have hundreds and thousands of lines of codes and all kinds of different files. But what I find is that once you've got that all set, this dark mode or whatever you're doing the opposite of, so you can start with dark mode and go to light mode. So you have multiple options there as a coder as well. But so few lines are actually required to give an option that it's like, it's kind of silly not to, because it's fun because you can do more coding, like theme coding, which is always kind of, you know, it's cool to do visual things, but also it's like, you know, added like 4 lines of code and now I've got a completely different option and a different theme essentially. So again, this is small because of the CodePen, so it'll be a little bit longer, but I mean like a 1/10 of the size of whatever your typical code base would be, or smaller even. So anyway, Yeah.
Brave
So that's-
Brave was saying who
yeah.
turned off the lights. I don't know if you walked away when she swapped it. She's now in dark mode, and the SVG flip-flopped to show that. And then Fuel was saying developing in the 90s, all light mode, glaring CRTs that flickered, high-pitched fan noises. Things have gotten better. And Brave said, remember the blink. No one has forgotten the blink tag, all right? There's the switch.
It's still used. Go back to that Web 8 There's a couple, they do like these kind of fun facts at the bottom. I think it was Marquee or something, or there's Blink. I think Blink was depreciated, but Marquee is still around, and there's still sites.
I was going to say, we could bring Marquee back.
No, we cannot.
You're like,
no, I quit. I quit the internet if it comes back.
I quit the internet. I was talking to someone, and I was like, but really, like, why did it go away? And they were like, well, I think back in the day, you couldn't actually do those things with CSS. So now if you need to, you can make a blink tag custom, or you can make a marquee custom, right? Like you can bring all of that back. Whereas I was like, wow, I was trying to like actually wrap my brain around not being able to do that kind of thing with CSS. Like just the locked inness of like, you're either using the element or you're not. I don't know. It's just, we have come a long way. I'm so grateful.
We have come a long way. Yeah. I've worked with CSS for too many years to name, but it's same thing with accessibility. There used to be less that you could do, and now you can do so much. And I can't even tell you how many times like I tried to 3 blocks, making sure they're all the same and the same length, no matter what the content. Like back in the day, that was like a real thing. Like people would write whole articles on, like whole courses on it, essentially. And now you just like, throw in a couple, Flexbox or whatever, or grid, and you're good, So yeah, good times. Good times.
Man,
All right,
Trezzy says they actually have an article in progress. Bring back Marquee. You need to send it to me on the Twitters. Trezzy, when you have it, I will promote. Okay, that is all. Sorry, we're upsetting Carie.
That's fine. I'm ready to quit the internet most days. So it's cool. I'll retire.
Oh, goodness.
All right. So this is a simple first or third step, right? So now we're going to move into the fourth step. All right. So we've added a little bit of animation. How cute is that? So I've essentially added, so if you don't have a visual of this or can't see it, having the heart is turning colors gradually, and the Valentine, it's supposed to represent like lace or something that's kind of moving around the Valentine clockwise. So in this particular case, I'm not writing out the script, but you can do that as well. So I've put in a couple options or resources for that because it's really fun. But it's very time consuming if you're doing it certain ways and not using like D3 or something to do it for you. But if you're doing it manually, it's kind of a pain. So in this case, we have the same stuff we had. We still have, and I'll show you in a second, I can flip back to light mode is still there. It's still going to have the thing. But now I've added some animation just with simple keyframes, like no JavaScript needed and any of this. So you can do that. This is just a simple version, but using keyframes, we're changing the fill, and it's kind of doing this like morphing instead of just doing like straight, color shocks here. And then the same thing with the dash. So essentially that's a border and it's just moving in an order. So this is what we have here. That's what I got. So if I go back to my preferences, still waiting for the ducks to clap.
I know.
All right, so that's it. So this is kind of the concept of we can, add more things to our SVG, nothing too exciting, but we can, add animation. What we're doing in step 4 is step 5, the final step here, is that we are going to use the prefers reduced motion option to give somebody a chance to not see them animation. Maybe it's annoying, maybe they don't like it, they just don't prefer it, right? It has the name is indicating. Let me grab that preference again. It keeps going on my other screen. There you go. So this one on the Mac at least is in a different location. It's under accessibility, under display, and then reduce motion. So as soon as I click that,
yes, instantly, yeah.
stop. Yeah, it used to be you had to refresh it, but it got a little bit smarter.
Wow.
So I can just kind of do that. And so, and if I go back again to light mode, I chose the purple as the background instead of the red just to show a change. I've got some color contrast issues here I can see right away. So I definitely want to be going back and like making sure that I'm meeting that in that like frozen state. But if I scroll all the way down here to the bottom or next to the bottom after the animations, sorry, don't want to make anyone sick. We have this prefers reduce motion reduce. And so in this case, I've chosen for the animation to be none. And then for the heart, I decided to add a fill. You know, I could change it or make it go back to the default, which is the red. And so I just chose, I wanted it purple just to show that change. But again, same sort of concept that you had with the dark mode, light mode, is that, you know, a couple lines and given a completely different option for somebody to see this. Refresh it, make sure it goes back to that purple. I like the concept.
Someone asked about that, and I saw when it's circling in the middle, there's a flicker, and I think it's just they're asking if it's a glitch or a feature. I think it's just because the circles are, you know, they're following that heart path.
Yep.
And they just kind of, for an instant, are. I think what is happening is like when it blips down to that point, like that's the only amount of the circle that can be seen down there. Like I'm wondering if it's got to do with layering or anything, but. Yeah.
No, and I've seen that too. Like when it moves and it does that in the middle, it's just the drawing. So if I would have changed the drawing, or if I wanted to adjust my, you know, something with my border, you know, make the circles bigger or smaller, I might not see something like that. So I thought it was kind of fun. Like it's a feature, it's not a bug.
We're definitely going with feature fuel.
Feature. Yeah. So I mean, so we did the 5 steps, and like I said, those slides, you can get a little bit more information, more resources. But one thing I did want to point out is the concept, and I think I linked to it too from Tatiana Mack had talked about this concept of flipping this idea on its head and giving a no motion option first, or no motion approach to images. So your default would be no motion, and then it would check the operating system to see if you had that checked or not, and then give you the presentation. So if you had no option chosen, then it would default to no motion. So it's that concept of, you know, when you go to a site, sometimes I don't know if it's going to have motion or not. I don't know if it's going to trigger anything in me and not. And so the safe option would be start off with no motion and maybe like allow someone to toggle it on. It's a little bit different than light mode, dark mode, where it also has that automatic mode as well. So it doesn't have the 3.
Usually though, the system itself defaults to allowing motion and then you disable it. So how would you go about, because then it would be like something on your interface, right?
So exactly. So that's kind of the thing. Whereas the light mode, dark mode has like almost essentially 3 options, right? You have the default, light, and dark. So I can make multiple choices. Whereas motion is either toggled on or toggled off. So if you wanted to present motion as an option, that's essentially what you'd have to do in your interface, like press a button or something, like it's some sort of toggle JavaScript or whatever that says that, you know, I want motion, essentially signing. And I've seen people do that, at least on their personal site, where they give you options for motion, they give you option for color contrast, they give you options for light mode, dark mode, like in the interface itself. Some companies or some individuals might not want to present it in the UI like that and so they might rely on just the code and whatever you have as a user checked in your operating system. So, but it is an option. We're talking about options. So it is an option that you could give to your users inside that interface. There's no like rule that says the users only have to do these things on their own. They might not know that that's even a thing they can do, right? I think we were talking about that in the group this morning, where you're like, or like, I think maybe again it was Ashley, or it was like people are like, oh, look at this cool hidden feature, and it's like, nope, that's been there for a while, and people who needed it know about it. But Um, yeah. So I don't know. There's different
Cool.
ways to think about it, but
No, I love it. This has been amazing. And let's see, I know, let's double checking. Our next speaker is queued up. So if you have any wrapping thoughts or other picks you'd like to bring up.
well,
Oh
no,
yeah, Ray was saying options versus preferences. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the only other thing I wanted to talk about was just accessibility talks. I wanted to plug that just because we're a nonprofit, and we just became a nonprofit, which was super exciting to us. But we do a monthly chat where we have people come in and do talks on different topics, like all kinds of different ones. And so if you're interested in accessibility as a topic, go check it out and see, some of the past videos, or look ahead and see what's coming up. We just had Anna Cook on in December, who knows a lot about accessibility for design. So again, depending on what it is that you are interested in topic-wise, we probably have talked about it before once or twice, and we have all these people. So I really want to support other voices in our community. And so we're just one piece of it. There's other organizations and other talks. And obviously we have people like you who do like accessibility features and things like that. So all kinds of really cool things that are happening out in the community. So I encourage you to meet a few people and go to a couple of these events. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say. So.
That's perfect. Here is the link. Check it out. Ali Talks, or A11y talks.com.
There you go.
Love that.
Acronyms.
I'm just gonna say them all until everyone decides. We're just gonna go through. Yeah.
Yeah, if you do all of them, then one of them has to be right? So
Thank you again for
then
letting
at that
me
point we're. Oh no, thank you so much. This was amazing, and I see so many people in chat. Just grateful and learning lots. So thank you, Carie. It's been awesome.